to communicate all of the functionality would have been incredibly hard, especially because this is a complication maybe we'll get to in another war story. Switch glass is configurable per monitor. So on each display, you can choose whether or not you want the palette to appear and every single setting about how, like, where it appears and everything, right? And so when you bring up the preferences, it brings up a window on every single monitor, kind of like display preferences. You know, when you go system preferences and you do displays, and it brings up a separate window on every display. That's how you configure displays separately. That's how this works. That's not how front and center works. Like, just dealing with the UI issues and the explanation of how this stuff works alone, it was just, it would have been a much bigger task. Like, at that point, I'm basically signing up to start making drag thing, and I'm not ready to sign up for that yet. So I'm going to make
give it another 2 weeks.
I'm going to make 2 purpose-built applications that do specific things. If you want one, or you want the other, or you want both, like, it'll work in all scenarios, but they're like single-purpose things. And within those single-purpose things, it's hard enough to explain and get working, right? But you're right, that is a technically better solution. Obviously, the real solution is 8%, and I am thus far very capably resisting the urge to do that, because that is way more work than what I've been doing. And I just want these 2 little things, and I just want them to work together. So yes, that did occur to me and would be more straightforward technically, but I would still be working on that, and I would probably get to a point where I regretted it terribly, because just trying to figure out how to massage the preferences of UI into something sensible would just be, you know, and not from a technical perspective, but just like user interface design. How do I convey to the user how all these different things work? It's hard enough. Like, if you look at the switch glass preferences, there's a section of it that applies globally, and there's another section that applies just to the display. And I try to label that and try to explain that, but even that, it's not a great interface. Like, it's a difficult problem. If you want to have per preferences dialogue with, like, the toolbar at the top and the different images, and it's complicated. So anyway, that's enough war stories for this week. I can revisit it in future weeks, because there are plenty more interesting and fun things about developing what looks like a very simple application. But just to give you an idea of the ridiculousness that's lurking under the covers of this thing that lets you click on an icon and bring an app to the front.
Awesome. Trying to get it to work the way I wanted to and do the things I want it to do and be more polished. And like, golly, I spent probably a couple of days on the zoom in animation, and I already done almost the exact same thing on Vignette, but I was doing it differently, and I wanted it to work a little differently, and that alone took me days, which is probably an indictment of my own skill in UI programming more than anything else. But that's just not the sort of thing that comes naturally for me. And oh god, there's so much to even the simplest app, and I don't think I have it as bad as you, John, but I run into Apple APIs that are not in an Apple API. Like, a lot of times Vignette would just stop writing updates because Apple's APIs have decided, no, you're done now. Okay. Like, they don't really tell me I'm done. It's just, it doesn't work. And I don't know why. And, you know, the best theory I've had, and I wrote some code to try to slow everything to what the limit is, but they don't tell you what the limit is.
Welcome to iOS.
Yeah, and well, in you, John, I think you're probably bumping up against legitimate bugs. And so, you know, Apple is made of humans write bugs, but still, just infuriating, because there's nothing you and I can do about it. Or Marco, I mean, all 3 of us, there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to sit there and go, yep.
If you're lucky, the API that you're running into a problem with will be a commonly used API for normal apps. That's another one of the consequences of me choosing to make these weird apps. Like, regular apps don't ever need to call the APIs that bring other applications to the front. Like, that is a rare piece of functionality. So who cares if there's some weird minor bugs in it? And I'm saying that from Apple's perspective, but honestly, I care as a Mac user. Set aside all of my applications. Like, I'm frustrated when I can't bring all the windows of an app to the front. It happens to me a surprising amount of the time. Again, nothing to do with my apps, just literally clicking on the dock icon for Safari, and I want all my Safari windows to come to the front, and they won't. It's been driving me nuts for years. But if you're writing a text editor, hell, if you're writing Photoshop, if you're writing Final Cut, you will never call those APIs. They are not relevant to app development. So it doesn't surprise me that they haven't gotten fixes. Whereas if you're using the Context API, that is widely used on iOS. And there's a slim chance that if you file that bug, maybe they'll add in a subsequent release, there's a limit, and we'll notify you if you call it too many times, or we'll document it or something like that. But I don't think anything's going to happen for these. Like, what I think would happen is more likely to happen is Apple will be like, why do we even have that API? third-party applications shouldn't be asking for other applications to come to the front. Deprecated, you can't use it anymore. It's going to go away in 2 versions. Like, you almost don't want to call attention to those type of APIs because they're like system extension stuff. It's not, you never need to make Microsoft Word, you never need to call those APIs. So, it is what it is.
How's Hops?
We're getting there. He
Mac out there has clipboard history in some fashion. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so if you're making a really good clipboard history manager, like I use PasteSpot, I think it's really good. You have to be aware. It could be that despite you making this happen and maybe making lots of money off of it, at any point, Apple could decide this year we're going to add that to the OS. And that's just the price of doing business when you're extending the system. And it's true of applications too. If you make, a thing that lets you read articles later, Apple could add that feature to its applications, and
could and did.
What can you do?
You could keep going because nobody uses it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Just because they added it to the operating system doesn't mean people still won't want your fancier, much more configurable version, but you never know.
Well, congrats, John. I hope you earn enough money for a wheel for your...
No, I can't afford a wheel. I just want a bracket that holds hard drive wheel for $100.
Oh my goodness.
We are sponsored this week by Bombas. Working out is hard. It's always been hard. Even when it's easy, can't change that. But they could make it more comfortable. If this year your theme or your resolution is to get fit, start by getting socks that can keep up every step of the way. You do a lot of things to stay active, lots of different things. So Bombas made lots of different performance socks designed from everything from running to hiking to cycling and more. If you're very into sports, or if you're planning to get very into sports, Bombas can help there with performance socks and styles made specifically for basketball, tennis, running. It will stay cool, dry, and comfortable, never sweaty. And Bombas socks are just really good socks. They provide support in places you didn't even know you needed, like your arches. Each sock is built with a special arch support system that's supportive, but not too tight. Kind of like a nice hug, but on your foot, a foot hug. And constantly pausing your treadmill to adjust twisted, bunched up, they stay perfectly in place. And you ever notice that annoying toe seam most socks have along the toe, that little ridge on top? Bombas got rid of it. They designed it out. It's gone. Just smooth sailing all the way across the top of your foot. I got to say, I use Bombas socks myself a lot of the time. And I recently, I got for Christmas, I got a couple of their merino socks. These are my favorite socks. I like them so much. I actually just earlier today ordered more because I keep going through them like first thing on every laundry cycle. And then I run out and I got to wait till the next laundry cycle to get my Bombas back. So I had to order more to get more Bombas because they're so good. So also, did you know that socks are the #1 most requested item in homeless shelters? Bombas socks were created to change that. For every pair you buy, Bombas donates a pair to someone in need. So go to bombas.com/ATP today and get 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com, bombas.com/ATP for 20% off. Bombas.com/ATP. Thank you so much to Bombas for hugging my feet and sponsoring our show.
I would just like to let you gentlemen know that Apple's laptop keyboards did not actually win an Oscar.
They kind of anti-won an Oscar.
So I saw that this was the thing, but I never got a chance to watch the video. So would one of you like to explain to me what happened here?
Yeah, this is Taika Waititi. What did he do? He was directed Jojo Rabbit this year, which was nominated. He's done a bunch of things and been in a bunch of things. And he was in that thing where you stand in front of the weird background, like the big backdrop, and the press asks you questions.
I believe it's called a step and repeat.
How do you know this?
That's the picture-taking thing. I'd like at a red carpet, there's like a big banner.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, like the big banners, and you stand in front of them, you get your picture taken, you keep walking.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just didn't know that's what it was called.
Those are called step and repeats.
But anyway, he's standing in front of this and he's taking questions. Someone asked him like something, I don't remember the question. It's like, with the writers strike, Writers Guild, something or other, how do you feel about what should writers do, or what would you like to see happen? It was some question that really wasn't leading in this direction at all. It was a Hollywood question about the entertainment industry and being a writer or whatever. And his answer was, a whole big spiel about how Apple needs to fix its keyboards. Like, that would help writers, because writers are out there in Hollywood and they're typing away on their Apple laptops because it's Hollywood and they all love Macs. But those keyboards are terrible. And here's the quote that keeps getting passed around, the money quote.
What are some of the needs that you believe that writers should be asking for in the next round of talks with producers?
Apple needs to fix those keyboards. They are impossible to write on. They've gotten worse. That makes me want to go back to PCs, because PC keyboard, the bounce back for your fingers is way better. And hands up who still uses a PC. You know what I'm talking about. It's a way better keyboard. And those Apple keyboards are horrendous, especially as the computers, as the laptops get newer and newer. I mean, here's the latest new iMac. The keyboards are worse. And I've got some shoulder problems. I've got like a sort of oos, I don't know if you call it over here, like this sort of thing here, which is that tendon that goes from like the forearm down into the thumb. You know what I'm talking about, you guys who are writing. And what happens is you open the laptop and you're like this. So we've just got to fix those keyboards. WGA needs to step in and actually do something.
This, went all around the web because it is, the Oscars are a mass market thing. Apple's keyboards, despite all us complaining about them and all the stories in tech world, generally don't break out into the same world as Hollywood entertainment. But here it is, the crossover event of the century. Famous Hollywood person hates Apple keyboards. Now, a couple of things are interesting to note about this. One, when he's describing it, he's just, speaking off the cuff, and he mentions like on Apple's new iMacs. And so you might start listening and say, is he actually complaining about the laptop keyboards? Or is he, because he said iMac? But really, as he goes on, it becomes clear as he explicitly mentions keyboards later, or laptops later, the massive brand footprint that the iMac name has still in people's mind from that teal plastic computer all those years ago is such that when a brain just reaches for, what was the name of that Apple product? Sometimes the thing that pops out is iMac, especially when you're thinking of a Mac. So I thought that was fascinating. But no, he is actually talking about the laptop keyboards. But the second thing is, because he's not a super duper tech nerd, he's not specifying, I don't like the butterfly keys. He doesn't know what butterfly keys are. We also don't know, does he hate the new 16-inch MacBook Pro with the good fixed keyboard? I don't know. He might hate that one too. Like, there wasn't enough information for tech nerds to latch onto. But, all this, the summary here is that these keyboards, even if Apple fixes them all to everyone's satisfaction tomorrow, which they still haven't done because they're selling the butterfly keyboards on all their laptops except for the one that Marco bought, for years, Apple will continue to have this reputation of keyboards that people don't like. And if it is actually the case that people still don't like the MacBook Pro, Apple still has more work to do. Again, I don't know. This is just one person's complaint. I suspect what they're actually complaining about is the butterfly keyboard, whether they know it or not. And I suspect they don't know or care that there's a new laptop that has a different keyboard. And I suspect